Welcome to the Own Your Epic podcast. My name is Jay Dostal, author of the book Own Your Epic, Leadership Lessons in Owning Your Voice and Your Story. In this podcast, I highlight the stories and voices of educators across the country who are making a difference in schools and uncover what makes them exceptional leaders in their field. By sharing the voices and stories of others, we can all learn to appreciate that each of us is the author of our own epic and our experiences are relatable to others, if we are willing to share them. Let's get started on the Own Your Epic process. Welcome to the Own Your Epic podcast. This is Jay Dostal, and I am excited to have my guest here today. Just started working with this guy, and he is an amazing educator, amazing coach. So much so that my own son is in his class because I trust him that much. So I'm going to let him do the introduction, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are and what you do.
All right, yeah. My name is Devonte Britt, and I am a teacher / coach here at Fayetteville High School. So teaching-wise, I'm in the social studies department. So right now I have U.S. history, and I have a new class, African American history. And so that's going good, and that's fun. Enjoy that. But also I am a football coach, and so that's fun as well. I coach on the defensive side of the ball. And so, yeah, I've been kind of doing that for a while, so it's good. It's fun.
How did you get into teaching and coaching? I mean, what prompted you to get into this crazy world called education?
Right. It's kind of a crazy story, but you know, it's kind of fitting. So my whole life, you know, I've loved sports, and I was always good at school as well. And so you get to high school, and you know, you're playing high school sports. You play football. I played basketball. I ran track. You know, just classic, young male, high school life or whatever. And so I was lucky enough to be recruited to play football by a couple different schools. So I ended up going to Harding University in Searcy. I don't know how much you know about Harding, you're a Nebraska guy, so probably not that much, But it's a different kind of school. It's a Christian-based private school, Church of Christ, that whole deal, and it's just a great place to be with amazing people. And so I go there. I'm playing football. I'm in school, and my senior year comes around, and my position coach at the time, on the football team, my position coach was retiring at the end of the year. And so my head coach came to me and was like, hey, Devonte, you've been great for us. I think you show a lot of characteristics to where you can, be a coach and things like that, and said, would you like to come on to the staff, use this opportunity to be a GA, and start coaching in that way. And so I did that for a few years, and so I tried the college coaching route. Then I realized there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of it's just different. It's different than high school, obviously, for a lot of reasons. It can be really tough on a family, traveling around, and just, you have to be ready to, leave and take a job at any moment, or, you may get fired from a job, have to relocate at any moment. And then also, I just felt like with college, the bottom line, when it came to, just win games, that just wasn't, that wasn't enough for me. And so I moved back home. I moved to Little Rock, and one of my best friends, who I actually played with at Harding, for a little bit, he was coaching at a high school in Little Rock, Joe T. Robinson, and this guy, he's awesome, one of the best people I know, and he's actually now the head football coach at Maumelle. We meet up for lunch one day just to, catch up or whatever, and, he starts telling me on this whole deal of, teaching and coaching in high school, and it just kind of took off from there. And so I end up getting my non-traditional license, going that route, and then I end up going back to school, to get my master's and everything in education as well. And, just been doing it since then. And so this is year 5, next year will be year 6, and so it's just kind of it's kind of been a crazy journey, but definitely, worth it.
So I just, from fellow college football player to fellow college football player, I think that some people may have this glamorized version of
Right.
what it is,
No
because you
doubt.
see a lot of things on TV, you see
Mm-hmm.
these Twitter and Instagram announcements about being recruited
Yes.
and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Did you find that college football was more like a job than anything else?
Oh, no question. Like, you find that out real quick. And I'll try to advise some of my current players on this all the time as they go and try to play college. Like, in high school, it's a lot of fun. You're a kid, you're doing it, for your school, your town, your community. Like, there's just, guys that you grew up with your whole life. When you get to college, you realize real quick that it's a business. It's kind of a Shark Tank. Like, everybody's trying to, work their tail off to be the guy, and play more, and do that whole thing. And it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then they put the schedule in front of you. Like, I'm no kidding. The first day that you show up, they gave us a schedule for the next 2 weeks, and it literally had the whole 2 weeks planned out in 10-minute increments. So basically all of your day was accounted for the first 2 weeks that you showed up to campus. And I'm just like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a culture shock for me as well, that, same as you said, in high school, you're doing this because you're having fun, you're getting to hang around with your friends, and then you go through that. And granted, I went to a D2 school, so
Me too.
it's not like the D1 stuff where you're getting these visits and that sort of thing. I mean, for D2, you got to love playing the game.
You got to love it
in order to continue on with it. And I remember showing up, and everything was scripted. All the study time is scripted. Meal times are scripted. Practices are scripted. I mean, when all is said and done, you're spending 10, 12 hours a day on football and football only. And then you got your classes on top of that, and it's a full-time job. And I redshirted my first year, and so after completing it, I saw friends of mine that came in and out of the program, but I stuck it out for 5 years, and it's a grind.
It is.
It is a grind.
grind.
At any point in time, did you ever think, like, this really isn't for me? I'm not. I could be hanging out with my friends, having a good time. What kept you in it?
Right. Absolutely. I think every college athlete goes through, some of those thoughts. And what held it together for me was I was lucky enough my 2 best friends from high school also had scholarships to the same school, and we all went together. And so whenever you get that feeling of like, man, I'm out here by myself, I'm on my own, it's like I had those guys that I could go to. They were my roommates, and so then, like, we were actually like best friends, like the 3 amigos in high school, and so they helped me get through that. But even still, as you progress through the years, like it's tough. It's tough. But I tell people, it's like, imagine, everybody has this view of like Division I football and all the glitz and the glamour. When you go play Division II, it's the game, which the game is still the same, but all the nice, shiny, fancy stuff around that is stripped away, and you gotta love playing the game. And so having my friends there and just having that innate love for the game was probably, what kept me doing it.
Yeah, it's really important you said that. You've got your buddies around you to do it, because I was not an athletically gifted person like you were. I just felt like I needed to. I mean, honestly, when in high school, I was a starting punter, a backup quarterback, a backup center, and a backup defensive end. But my dad played college football, and I've got cousins who were involved in college football, and I just felt like I had something to prove, and so I decided to walk on. I didn't even get a scholarship, and then I earned some money. And for those people who in D2, you're not getting full ride scholarships. You're getting bits and pieces that maybe pay for your books and that sort of thing. But I learned through that process, which is going to lead me into my next question about going through the grind, sticking to it. And so how does that translate
your experiences with football translate
Right.
into the classroom? Because I think people have this perceived notion of what school is based on
Yes.
their own individual experience, but from a teacher perspective, how does that day in, day out grind
Right.
of teaching compare to that day in, day out grind of football?
Right. No, it translates for sure, and I mean this when I say I truly believe that football is the greatest team sport that there is because of the life lessons and skills that it teaches you. It forces you to learn, whether you're aware of it or not, that you're going to need in your everyday life. And so that grind, the discipline to, have tasks in front of you and stick to it and get it done, to, work for a group, towards a common goal or something bigger than yourself. Those things that the game teaches you are so applicable in my life. And so whenever I feel like I'm getting a little overwhelmed as a teacher, I just fall back to that. And my coach used to always tell us, like, hey, just put blinders on, zone in on what's important, the things that you can control, and go do them. And so as a teacher, that's hard because you've done it, lesson plans, grading, emails, communicating with parents, just all these things that come up, throughout the daily life of a teacher. It's hard and it can get a little bit overwhelming. So the time management aspect of it that you learn in college definitely applies, but it's also just the grit and the discipline to just stay the course and stick with it, and things will turn out great.
So you added another variable to this equation this year too, because you're a new dad.
Yes, absolutely.
And so now you got a little one at
Yes.
home. You've got
Yes.
football, which
Yes.
here in the South is a big deal,
Deal.
huge time commitment, and your teaching responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
How do you juggle all of those? How do you keep things straight, and how do you think that is going to benefit your child growing up, seeing
Right.
their father go
Right.
through this process?
Well, here's the deal. I'll be lying if I said that I had it all figured out at this point. I mean, a lot of people have told me that parenting, the first couple months of it, it's just like you're thrown in the deep end and you're swimming. You're just trying to keep your head above the water. I have felt that, for sure. But like you just plan, okay? You have situations that pop up that you've thought about before, and you just, follow your route. And so the thing that I love, me and my wife, we just have these core values and things that we believe in. And so if there's a situation that pops up that we're not ready for, we just kind of fall back to those things, and it kind of keeps us on track. But this has been the craziest year of my life. Like, it really has. Like, I don't even know if you realize all this, but within the last year, I've gotten married, got engaged, got married, became a father. We had a crazy football season, successful, football season. And then, just coming into these last months, there's also been some other things that happened in my life that just make it all kind of crazy. But you stick to who you are, what you believe in, and when you have that clear vision of who you are as a person, your decisions will most of the time line up with that. Sometimes you may get off track, and you just gotta, reroute yourself and stay that course.
You mentioned something there. You didn't say the word, but I talk a lot about this with people who ask me, you're juggling all these different things. How do you manage to keep all those balls in the air? And I typically go back to the whole issue of compartmentalization.
Yes.
And I've got things going on in my personal life, and I've got my work stuff, and now I've got a new job that I'm going to be moving to, and so those are three pretty big balls that are just hanging out there. And as you said, you put the blinders on and you focus on it. That you have to compartmentalize those things, because if you don't, they're going to leak over into the classroom, onto the football field, into your relationships, and it's easy to say. It's very difficult to do, and I honestly feel that your colleagues and your kids, your own personal kids, but also the kids that we're leading, they're pretty intuitive. They can tell when something's wrong, and so how does that work for you? Because I think a lot of people struggle with compartmentalization. How do you is it just like a force of habit now, or how did you get to that? Did that always work for you?
No, it didn't always work, but it's a process. It's a growth process. It's something that you just learn, along the way. And so one skill that I don't even know if I would call it a skill. It may be in some situations a negative attribute of mine, but it's very easy for me to just hold in things, And so I'm able to kind of push my emotions to the side, with a lot of stuff and some of my, personal relationships that has hurt me. But when it applies to the job, when you take the emotion out of it and you just focus on, those things, the tasks in front of you and things that you need to do, it kind of makes it a little bit easier. And so now that I'm, 29 years old and, been a professional for a while now, I have some better ways to do that. I'm aware of some of, my natural tendencies and faults and kind of able to work around those. And so I'm going to give a shout out to one of my colleagues, one of my best friends, really, Derek Davis. You know him. He teaches and coaches here. Great guy. But
always positive.
Always positive.
Always positive.
Just the best guy. And so we teach this leadership class with the football players. Just try to develop some strong leaders within the football program. And what we tell them is that you make out a list. You figure out, which things are important to you. And so we'll have them list out the 5, big rocks, things that are important to you, that you believe in, who you are, who you say you want to be. And then, aside from that, we go things that you can control and things that you can't control. And so one of the things that I feel like a lot of people in today's society struggle with, just because there's so many natural distractions. I mean, your cell phone is basically set up to be a distraction for you, a way for you to, take your mind and put it somewhere else. And so we list out things that you can't control and what you can't control. And if you can't control it, then don't worry about it. Don't spend time thinking about it. Don't put energy or effort into it. You focus on those things that you can control, and then you'll find out that, life gets a little bit easier, and it's easier to stay on task and just, get done what you need to get done.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a skill, and adults struggle with that skill, and we're supposed to be modeling this for our students.
Yes.
And as teachers, in particular, teachers, coaches, I think sometimes people put those in 2 different buckets, but they're really the same thing.
No, it is.
But
sure.
Modeling that whole notion of working through issues that you can control versus things that you can't control, and where are you going to spend your time on this? And I think there's a lot of times where, and this is where school cultures kind of take a left turn and probably go into areas that they shouldn't. But when the majority of people on your team are focusing on issues outside of their control, it goes a completely different direction. And so, I use the lessons that I learned through athletics growing up. Like, you do what your responsibility is. Yes, you're worried about the team, but you take care of your responsibilities, and if you can trust that everybody else is going to take care of their responsibilities, you have the potential to do some really cool things. It's when you try to take over the responsibilities of somebody else that things start messing up. And I think that's where you see not only school cultures, but teams go in the wrong direction when people are trying to do too much and step out of their zone. Do you feel that way as well?
Absolutely, and that's something that we try to talk to our kids about all the time and make them aware of. And so I'll tell my players all the time, like, you just got to do your 1/11th. There's 11 people on the football field for us at one time. Everybody has a job. Everybody has a responsibility. You don't have to do anybody else's job. You just have to be a star in your role. You just have to do what you're supposed to do in your role. And so 1/11th, I'll put the fraction up on the board, 1 out of 11, that's all you got to do. And if you get everybody doing that, then, the result can be something great. And so you can take that and apply it to a school as well. We're at a big high school, and so it may be like, 1/200th, but everybody has their role, and if we can just own our role and do what we're supposed to do, then, the school can be a highly functioning, place for everybody.
Totally true. So I prepped you ahead of time for this.
Yeah.
So this question is going to come.
Yeah.
But Part of the Own Your Epic process, you know, if you think about your life as this hero's journey, and you're the author of it, and you know, want to make sure that you amplify your voice and your story, but you're curating and cultivating all of these experiences, whether they're good or bad experiences, and you've learned from them. What is that one story that you like to tell others about yourself that really helped shape you into the person that you are today?
Right. For me, and this may be true for most people, but for me, it goes back to my childhood and how I was raised. And so I just feel like I've had to overcome a lot. And so when I explain kind of the circumstances around my upbringing, it kind of makes sense to, you know, why I am who I am, and, you know, why I do what I do. And so it's crazy, but just stay with me here, okay?
Okay,
So,
I got you.
Grew up in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Mom and dad are both, you know, both in my life growing up, and, you know, that was great, that was awesome. But it was definitely not your clear-cut, you know, American dream type family. I have 6 brothers and sisters. Yeah, 6. A lot of times where I wish that,
Where do you fall in that
it was less,
that order?
I am the 3rd youngest.
3rd youngest. Okay.
So there's 2 younger than me and 4 older than me, and so it's crazy growing up. But there wasn't ever really a time where all 6 of us were, you know, in the same house, so like living together as well. You know, it's kind of a little bit of a broken family, and even only one of my brothers and sisters, only one of us, me and my brother that's 11 months older than me, we have the same mom and dad. Everybody else is, you know, half brothers and sisters. And so it was crazy. You know, we struggled a lot growing up. We didn't have much. Neither one of my parents went to college. My mom didn't graduate high school, and so there's, you know, definitely some challenges with that. But, you know, it's, you know, kind of the hand that you're dealt, and so you know, kind of adapt to it and do the best that you can. And I tell people that, you know, none of my brothers and sisters went to college. Neither one of my parents did, and so for me, being a first generation college student, you know, and then eventual college graduate, and then, you know, to have my master's, like, for me and for my family, that's a big deal. You know, I kind of feel a responsibility to, you know, represent my family in the best way because of the things that I have been able to do. And I love my family. I love my brothers and sisters, and, you know, they've helped me, you know, a bunch in my life. But you know, there were some circumstances in our life to where it wasn't easy, and my life could have easily went another way. You know, there was a time, you know, when my dad was in jail for a little bit, and, you know, just the way that we grew up, it could have easily went another way. And some of my brothers and sisters have, you know, went down a negative route. You know, I talk about this to their face all the time, so I have no problem saying it. You know, it's part of my story. And so when I just look at the things that I've done in my life, me being able to kind of block out, you know, the negative things in my life, focus on the things that I'm good at, and use that, you know, to get to where I am with a bunch of help from people along the way, obviously. It just kind of gives me a responsibility to continue to stay on the right track and do the right things, because I'm kind of, you know, carrying the flag for my family, you know, and just trying to be the best that I can. And so just trying to change my family one generation at a time.
That's an awesome story, Devonte.
Yeah.
You know, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about how those experiences lend themselves to your ability to build relationships with students in the classroom.
Yes.
You know, my background, my family story is very different from yours. I have 3 siblings, and I'm the 3rd. I'm the only boy, so I got that first child tendency.
Yes, yes.
But as you were talking, I was trying to make connections between your life growing up and my life growing up. And although they're on very different trajectories, something that really resonated with me were both my parents were teachers. And so when I'm growing up, my parents spent the majority of their time focusing on the students in their class.
Right.
So while I was their child, I wasn't getting the same type of attention
Yes.
that they were giving their own students. And so because of that, I had to, develop some level of independence. And I love my parents, I love my sisters, but growing up with two teachers, that's a little tough.
Yeah.
Because you always feel like you have to walk this line. But yeah, it's just, I think it's really important for people to understand that even though your backgrounds may be very different from one another, there's always those little slivers of connection that can draw you closer to others. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because again, that's the reality of some of our kids growing up in this school. And do you find that you're able to find those kids and connect with them pretty easy?
Absolutely. I feel like my background is unique enough to where I can take almost any kid that I teach, any kid that I coach. I can take, their story and find some type of connection, to my life and some type of similarity to where I say like, hey, I've been that, before. I was in, a situation, very similar to that before, and just, preach into them, and tell them like, hey, no matter what's going on in your life, you can overcome your circumstances.
So how'd you do that with my son?
Look, your son is great.
You don't have to answer that question.
No. He is a thinker. He's a free thinker.
Oh, he's a free thinker.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. Sometimes I have to, like, hey, are you sure? Like that. That makes sense. That's a good deal. But he's great, man. Like kids like your son make it easy because you don't have to push them or poke them or prod them to get the wheel spinning in their head. Like it's already going for him, and he's going to bring it to you, and then you can just start a conversation, and he'll listen and he'll soak it in, go think about it, come back to next class, talk about it some more. It's just he's a joy to have.
Well, here's a little something for you. This is secondhand compliment, and this is how I know that you are making a difference in the lives of others. When my son comes home, and high school students, they're not one to go home and talk to their parents about how things are going at school, but Mason makes a concerted effort to talk about Mr. Britt and the conversations that he has with Mr. Britt in class. And I'm all about the affirmations, and you need to hear that. And I know some people get a little uncomfortable, but you need to know that you're making a difference in the lives of kids. And as a parent of one of those kids, I thank you for that. So last question before we wrap up here, because believe it or not, we're at about 27 minutes, which is crazy.
Right,
but what's in store for you? What's the future like? I mean, where's your head at? Do you maybe want to look at college coaching again, or are you really finding your niche here? Because we've had a lot of success here at Fayetteville High School, and you've been part of that. So what's the next step?
I am 1,000,000% sure that I'm not going to go back to college coaching. I really feel like I've found my niche, and this is what I tell people. I teach 4 classes, right around 30 kids a class, 25 to 30, somewhere between there. I coach 2 football teams, a 9th grade team, and the varsity team. And all in all, I get to, interact with about, 300 kids. We're on block schedule, so in a 2-day span, about 300 kids. What else could I go do to where I could be able to have a positive influence, be able to positively impact that many young adults, or young kids, teenagers who need that, and that's why I do what I do. And so I had a bunch of people along my journey who helped me and influenced me and got me to where I am today. And just to be able to pay that forward and put it back into these kids, I just feel like this is the perfect space for me to do that. And so I love Fayetteville. I plan to be here for a while. high school teaching and coaching is just my thing.
Would I ever be able to get you up to Nebraska?
Probably not. It's too cold. Probably not.
Too cold.
No, I tell people all the time I'll never move north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Gotcha.
Because it's just, the cold weather is not my deal. Like, I don't think you understand, like, when it snows, there's, ice and freezing rain, stuff like that. Even here in Arkansas, I'm like, I tell my wife all the time, we got to move somewhere where it never does. It's like, let's go to Florida, let's go to California right now. So Nebraska would be a hard sell.
So where can people find you on social media?
Right, you can find me, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram.
What's your handle on Twitter?
My handle on Twitter is Devonte Britt, so I just take my name and shorten it a little bit. Fun fact: most of my friends call me Vontae, not Devonte. I know it's most of my Little Rock people,
Gotcha.
do that, and so we'll get there. But yeah, Devonte Britt, VONTE. BRITT, and so you get a little bit of football, you get a little bit of family stuff, retweet some funny stuff every once in a while, but just loving life, doing what I do.
That's awesome. Well, man, we're at the time for the podcast to be over, but shout out to you for just being an awesome human being. I mean, I've been blessed just to be able to get to work with you on a daily basis, to have my kid in your class. And while I am sad that I'm going to be leaving Fayetteville High School, I know that you and I will stay connected forever. I mean, we're on social media, and I'll take your call anytime. So
no doubt.
any of that stuff comes up, you let me know. But please make sure that listeners out there, make sure that you give Devonte a follow on Twitter, and stick around or come around for the next episode of the Own Your Epic podcast. Thanks, Devonte.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on today's podcast. To find out more about Own Your Epic, check out my website at ownyourepic.blogspot.com, where you can purchase my book or subscribe to all the latest blog and podcast updates. Until next time, own your epic and share your voice and your story. It matters and can make a difference in the lives of others.